Sheikh Tahir. We have lost a lot of people, man, because of this virus. And, you know, before we get into our main topic today, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on the loss and people having to put away their loved ones and not being able to do a lot of the traditional symbolic things that we do within the Islamic community when it comes to a janazah.
Well, I actually performed the alhamdulillah salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Just 5 days ago, I actually performed a janazah, and it was definitely the most awkward experience in terms of janazahs that I can remember ever being involved in. That's because you are not, you know, you're not allowed to touch people, right? So, I mean, the brother is grieving, and the brother who was grieving himself had symptoms of COVID-19, and I mean, but even if he didn't, you know, I'm trying to be, you know, responsible and not touch anybody, right? I mean, we're supposed to maintain our distance. So it was very awkward, you know, trying to offer comfort and so forth when you can't touch a person, right? I mean, normal responses that you're going to go and you're going to hug them and so on and so forth. The janazah, we weren't allowed to have more than 10 people. And so, and that was it, you know, and the person who died, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her, she was popular. I mean, it wouldn't have been very difficult to have a few hundred people at her janazah, but it just didn't happen like that. So these are, you know, when you think about it, not to sound grim, but our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, "Akthiru min zikri hadim al-lazzat," that you should think a lot about and you should remember a lot the destroyer of pleasure. And he was referring to death, because death takes away worldly pleasure. It takes away, you know, your ability to be with your family, your ability to enjoy the things that you would, you know, normally enjoy in this temporal life that we're living in. So we're supposed to remember death often. And I think that, you know, subhanAllah, when we look at this whole idea of, well, what is this coronavirus? Is it a punishment from God? You know, is it a test, a mercy from God in some ways? I mean, the reality is that all of life is a test. The entirety of life is a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran that He created death and He created life, لِنَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test you as to which of you is best indeed. So who is going to strive to do their best in this life, because this life is temporary. And whether a person believes in God or not, right? Everybody recognizes that this life that we live is not going to last forever. So a Muslim processes that and says, wait a minute, can I take something from this situation that is happening right now? Life has altered tremendously, you know, in the last month. Things have changed drastically, and one of the things that we should get out of this is better preparation for that meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to count those who have died in this particular pandemic, to count them amongst the shuhada. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the reward of those who have died as martyrs. If there's any solace, you know, that can be gained from this, it's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us more reward for difficulty if we haven't imposed the difficulty upon ourselves. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told his wife Aisha, "Inna ajraki ala qadri nasabi." Your reward is coincides with the difficulty of performing whatever deed it is. So, you know, if salat is difficult for you because you know, because of your work schedule, but you still take the time out, you know, to make wudu and go pray, that reward for preparing for salat and praying in a scenario, in a situation that doesn't make salat easy for you, is different from the one who lives in a Muslim land, hears the adhan, Masjids are prepared. You know, it's very easy for them to pray. The reward for the difficulty, you get reward for the difficulty itself. People who are going through this difficulty, if they bear it with patience, and that is the key. That is the key. That we don't deal with this situation and we're complaining about what Allah has decreed for us. It's outside of your control. That part is not in. But what is in your control is how you manage this situation, how you deal with it. What is your attitude? So if you bear the situation patiently and you seek Allah's reward, then there's a great reward in this trial and this test that we're going through.
You know, Sheikh, I have some issues when I see that I'm still riding around throughout the city of Philadelphia, and I'm hearing that there are still some masjids here in the city of Philadelphia that are very much open 4 or 5 daily prayers and still hosting and operating Juma. Now, you and I are both, you are definitely a scholar in the religion. I am not a scholar in the religion, nor am I a medical scholar. But I pay very close attention to what the media is saying, what those people in authority in the medical industry are saying, that it's not good that we come together and we have our worship. And I don't think the Muslims in that sense are any different than the Catholic churches or the synagogue, because, you know, the disease is just out here, and it's just not singling out any particular faith or race for that matter. Why do we still have our masjids open?
Okay, so let me just back up for a second. You know that I'm not a fan of you calling me a scholar, and so I appreciate if we back that up for a second. I've studied the religion. I continue to study and learn every day. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. But so this issue is twofold. I think number one is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And that goes back to each particular situation, meaning that we have people who normally we would call them people of knowledge. We're referring to religious knowledge. But the reality is that these type of decisions cannot be made only by or with the information that we have available from a textual standpoint. What we have to do as people who study the religion is consult the people who understand best what this particular virus is, how it attacks, where it attacks, how it spreads, the potency of its contagiousness, for example. So these are things that we have to go back to medical professionals for. And alhamdulillah, we have a lot of medical professionals in the Western world who speak English, who are up to date when it comes to the latest as to what this particular what COVID-19 is, and all of the other questions that I just posed. So that being said, I am not aware personally of masjids that are just open for open and operating business as usual. They may be out there. I'm not denying that they're out there, but I'm not aware of those particular masjids. As for the masjids that do remain open, for example, for Salatul Jum'ah, such that a very small number of people can congregate and that the Jum'ah be live streamed, which is what we are doing at United Muslim Masjid, then I'm not aware of anything that would prevent that from the Philadelphia Department of Health or from the State Department of Health, for that matter. What they are talking about is, in fact, yesterday we had a special session that was hosted by ICNA Relief with the Philadelphia Department of Health, with the specialists in viruses and a specialist in epidemics, epidemiologists, right? So one thing that stood out was the idea of distancing 6 feet, right? Because I'm sure you heard of that, right? When they say the social distancing, stand at least 6 feet apart. One thing that she said was that that's a bit arbitrary. The idea is that though this virus it can be spread like airborne through the air, that is not the main way that people are contracting the disease. Most of it is through droplets, right? So if somebody coughs or they sneeze, or even sometimes when people talk and, things are coming out of their mouth as they talk, this is more the way that the virus is spread, along with, the idea that when this person, for example, let's just say that they cover their mouth when they sneeze, but they cover it with their hand, and then they touch a doorknob, and then you come after them and touch the doorknob. This is a very easy way that it spread, and so people talk about touch points, for example, light switches, doorknobs, and so forth. Anyway, the point being is what? That even though this disease spreads that way, if we, number one, isolate, which is or quarantine, which is the best course of action, that is that you just kind of stay away from people altogether to the best of your ability, but that if you do happen to come into contact with people, whether that's at the grocery store or somewhere else where you need to buy things for yourself and, for the time being, that you maintain a distance that would dramatically cut down your ability to contract the virus through the air. Now, if that's being done at the masjid, if that's being done at a particular masjid, similar to how one would do at a grocery store or a Walmart or a Target, I personally don't have a problem with that. From a religious standpoint, I don't think that I don't think that the masjid is making it any more likely that somebody would contract the virus than they would at a regular store. Mm-hmm. However, if those guidelines aren't being followed and people are very lax, with their adherence to physical distancing, and there's no method of sanitizing the masjid, there's no hand sanitizer available, people are not wearing masks, for example, which is basically what's being suggested across the board right now. In fact, many stores will not let you in. But around the corner from UMM, Sprout, you cannot get in without niqab and gloves. Sorry, I meant mask and gloves. So the reality is, you notice how it's interesting. I don't want to digress too much, but it's interesting how you actually can't get in the store without a mask on now, right? Whereas before, you're suspect. If your wife is covered her face or something like that, you're suspect. It's interesting how the tides have turned, and how when man dictates, right, then it becomes something that we all, we could all bow down to, we could all agree to. But when God dictates something, it's a little different. I don't know if I really want to follow that. So it's interesting. But anyway, so again, I think that this is an issue about the masjid has a responsibility to provide nourishment for people's souls. And that is for lack of a better term, that is the business that every masjid is in. It's in salvation. At the same time, we also have a responsibility to provide a safe environment where people's souls are being saved. And if we cannot do that, meaning that if the masjid is becoming a place where those guidelines that have been provided for us by reputable physicians, and we're not just talking about people who don't share our faith and our values, people who even share our values and our faith, have laid out the guidelines that are there. If we can't follow them, then I agree with you that the masjid should not become a place where we are more likely that people get infected than other places where people go about their business. So it's a delicate balance. I'm not, I don't think that we should judge very quickly like that. There are churches that are open, by the way. One of them was featured last night on the news. They talked about how they'll be providing Easter service the way that they plan on allowing people to come into the church and the distance that they plan on keeping, and the hand sanitizer and the masks and those things that will be available. And I'm talking about here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know of that church, and I know like this radio station and a whole flock of other people like really said to them like it doesn't really make sense, and this kind of like chimes in with a question that just came across on the Facebook Live page. How can we maintain the 6 feet in the masjid? Because when we pray, like our tradition, we're supposed to be, next to one another in a certain way to make the prayer.
Right. So the reality is that from a fiqh standpoint, purely from a jurisprudence standpoint, gaps in the rows do not invalidate the prayer. It is not from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pray that way, right? But if we put gaps in the rows, none of the madhahib, none of these schools of Islamic jurisprudence would consider that prayer to be invalid. The issue would be if a person is praying in a row all by themselves.
Okay.
And then that could create a problem from a fiqh perspective. But the general rule in Islam is that, and to state it, I'm trying to think of it in English. I'm sorry for me, but which is that necessity makes what is normally impermissible permissible. So things that are normally impermissible become permissible due to necessity. And al-haja, al-karahatu tazulu bil-haja. So things that are makruh, right, which are normally disliked, even though they may not be haram, they become permissible through need, not necessarily a dire necessity, but need.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it is disliked for someone to cover their face while they are praying. That's disliked across the board, and there's a hadith that supports that. All of the scholars that I have seen recently that talk about a fatwa, not just recently, because this has come up before. I don't know if you remember several years ago, the swine flu, right?
Yeah.
That was actually, the swine flu was prevalent during Ramadan. Several years back, I remember I was in Saudi at the time, and we had a very interesting Ramadan that year because they had limited the amount of people that they were allowing to come into the country. So the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ's masjid was less crowded than it normally was in previous years. But the issue came up then about people wearing medical masks in the salah. And anyway, the fatwa across the board from the scholars of Islam is that in the scenario where it is feared or there's a reasonable possibility that a virus may be spread, or any illness for that matter, it doesn't necessarily be, it could be bacterial, it doesn't have to be a virus, but that it would be spread, that it's permissible for a person to cover their face in a salah, and there's no karaha, it's not makruh anymore. That ruling is lifted because of the need. So similarly here, when we have the issue of praying in the masjid, it's permissible to pray with gaps in the rows under the circumstances, without a doubt. And the salah is valid. The prayer is valid.
Okay. I wanted you to give that good explanation that you did, because for a lot of people out here, they just regular layman Muslims. They don't, they're not as studied and learned in the religion as you. And, they may understand the religion one way, but you gave a really good explanation and why things could be done during the times that we're in right now. What I want to do, I want to go to the phone line. We have Brother Anthony, who's calling from North Philly. Brother Anthony, welcome to the show.
I have a question. I'm a shop steward at a nursing home with our nursing assistants. We have a Muslim brother in the home, and we're trying to accommodate for him to be able to get up in the morning to pray. So we had to have him try to work around our schedule to go into his schedule. And we're having a difficult time with it because every time we do it, he tells us, first of all, a woman cannot see him, be touched by him or cleaned by him or by her, get him clean. So the two brothers, which is myself and another, has to make sure he's okay. Now, we made some arrangements for his prayers, and the way we did it was we said at 4:15 we had to get you up in the morning to get you set up so you can start saying, get ready for your prayers. So we timed him how long he does his, cleaning up. He cleans himself, and then he has a thing he told us he has to cleanse himself before he goes sees Allah. And this takes between 20 minutes to 25 minutes. Now, mind you, that's more time with him. At 4:45, we take him, let him go to the window where he goes and face east so he can pray. And then at 5:45, we bring him up so at the front of at the nurse station so everybody can be aware he's there. So if he falls, somebody can see it. We want to make sure everybody can see him, that we can make sure he's safe. Now, we made these arrangements with him. He said, okay. But the problem is we're being not fully knowledge or Islam. We're like, a woman can't touch you. All she's doing, she's cleaning you just like we do our regular arrangements. And he's telling us, no woman is not to see me. And we're like, okay, we don't understand this. I mean, is this part of your religion?
Brother Anthony?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate your call. And let me just say, I'm actually I'm proud of you for calling in and trying to get an explanation. It's very important when we live in a society that does have different religions and people from different walks of life, that we make an attempt to understand each other, right?
Right.
So
that's what I'm trying to do.
No, I'm glad that you have taken the step to accommodate the person that you're talking about. And so hopefully, if you can, I don't know if there's a way you have for him to leave his number.
What I'll do is I'll get his number and I'll be able to give it to you. We thank you so much, Anthony. But what I want you to do, don't hang up. Don't hang up. Because I'm going to have our producer get your number, and I'm going to have Dr. Tahir give you a call, okay?
That's great. That's what I need. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Your services are tremendous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dave, can you get his number?
Peace and health to your family.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You as well. You as well, sir. That was a very good question that Anthony had.
I'll answer the question generically.
Okay.
Since it was asked on the air. But these type of questions, just so that we're very clear, they require situation-specific answers, right? So situations are going to differ from place to place, time to time, person to person. What's going on at that particular nursing home? So the accommodations that they've made are very honestly, it's honorable that they've done that they've made those accommodations.
Yes.
However, in the scenario where so from a medical perspective, strictly from a medical perspective, if we have a choice, then we are to be treated by somebody from the same gender. And that's just because we do have strict gender rules in Islam. We believe that is pure from the heart, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, right? And he tell the believing men to lower their gaze. Same thing for the believing women. If we are to lower our gaze, to not even look at somebody from the opposite gender intentionally, like, looking at them in a way that could create, lust, or even more so than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
To avoid touching them, being in their company unnecessarily to the end of it, right?
Right.
From a medical perspective, it's the same thing. From a medical perspective, and subhanAllah, I mean, when you think about how many doctors have been accused of situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Me Too movement has brought a lot of this stuff to light. You just see that from the Islamic perspective, we would never go down that road in the first place.
Exactly.
Because there wouldn't be that intimate type of situation arise in the first place, because those two genders, should not be alone with each other. So the point being is that what we try to do is make sure that a male doctor treats male doctor treats a female patient. However, again, we go back to our rule of necessity. Sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes the only doctor that can treat this particular illness is of the opposite gender. And if that's the case, then so be it, because now it becomes an overriding need and in some cases a necessity to save life. So we're not unreasonable. You know, there's nothing about Islam that is illogical, alhamdulillah. So in this scenario where a male attendant can be the one who is cleaning the male patient, then that's what we would desire. But if there's a situation where that's just not possible, you know, like the brother who called in, Anthony, you mentioned that there's only two of them. Their schedules may conflict. He may not be able to be there from that 4 o'clock schedule throughout the year. If it boils down to the fact that there's only a woman who is available, then it is permissible, even from the Islamic standpoint, it's permissible for that woman to be the one who cleans the patient. And again, we try to keep things, we try to do gender separation as much as possible to avoid undesirable outcomes.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, look, we are coming up very close to Ramadan, and with everything that's going on, the public gatherings not really being able to take place, not just here in Philadelphia, but basically across the world, what direction will the United Muslim Masjid take in regards to Ramadan, observing the nightly prayers? Will we have something set up for the nightly prayers?
So there's two main, let's just call them distinguishing features of Ramadan when it comes to communal life, right? One would be the iftar, which is the breaking of the fast. So that meal, which is done at Maghrib time or at sunset or on a daily basis, that meal is often done communally at the masjid. Mm-hmm. And that is a distinguishing feature. That makes Ramadan different from every other month, right? The other distinguishing feature is the communal night prayers that take place after the Isha prayer, which is that's our last prayer of the day, or you can say the last prayer of the night, whichever way you want to say, right? So what we are planning on doing for both of those scenarios is, and I inshallah, by no later than tomorrow, you'll find a survey on ummonline.org. If you need meals for iftar, for Ramadan, or you can deliver meals to other people for iftar for Ramadan, then we are asking that you fill out this survey, because what we're doing, many of the masjids have come together and pulled their resources together so that we can still provide the iftar for people who depend on the masjid in Ramadan for their meal, right? So I don't know of any masjids that are doing the iftar. That is, that you're going to be able to just come to the masjid at Maghrib time and get a meal. I don't know any masjids that do that, and we don't feel like that would be that we would be able to regulate that. In other words, that would just bring too many people together at the same time without the possibility of regulating. So, number one, when it comes to iftar, please go to ummonline.org and fill out the survey that is there if you need meals or you can deliver meals. The other avenue that has been created for people who need meals, this is specifically for the elderly. They can call the Aging with Dignity hotline at 267-428-0108. That's 267-428-0108. They can call the hotline. They'll leave their name and some contact information, and somebody from the Aging with Dignity committee will respond to them so that we can get their necessary, get the necessary details. How many meals do they need? What kind of allergies do they have, for example? and what their address is, so that the meals can be delivered if they need them delivered. So that's one thing. There will be no iftar at the masjid.
Okay.
When it comes to Salat al-Tarawih, which is the communal night prayer that is done after Salat al-Isha, that is a bit more complicated. And I don't want to make any promises in public. That information will be communicated to people. We're working with some of the other masajid to develop policy. Most of the masjids that I'm aware of will be closed, at least at the beginning of Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
I do expect by May 15th, for example, which will almost coincide with the last 10 days of Ramadan, I expect that there will be some restrictions lifted by then. What we're looking at across the country, but specifically in Philadelphia, is that there will be a gradual lifting of the restrictions. So I don't know if you remember, before the stay-at-home order in Philadelphia, remember it was you can congregate but only up to 50 people. Remember that?
I remember, yes.
And then from 50 it went down to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then from 10 it went to stay-at-home.
Right.
So the reversal is going to be similar in a lot of respects to how they were first implemented. So once they start lifting some of the restrictions, they're going to say you can congregate up to 10 people. Some of the stores will begin to open back up. And then they're going to say 50 people until they feel like they're, in the clear. They feel like the medical. Right now, the whole reason why these restrictions are in place, number one is to contain the virus. Number two is because our medical system, if too many people got sick at the same time, it's just overwhelming. The medical system and people who would normally be able to survive with minimal treatment would not be able to get that treatment, and the disease would worsen, and they would probably, die as a result. So in order to keep down the death of a minimum and be able to treat as many people as possible, you have to contain this thing from going wild, right? So,
no, Sheikh, I don't want to cut you off, but I feel you. Okay, let's just say around May 15th, there's a ban is lifted, and a little bit of people can start congregating. Now, from a layman point of view, to me, I would think that it would make sense, and Allah knows best, if we just said, you know what, the things that we normally would do for Ramadan, we can't do them because we don't want
to. Listen, yeah, that's clear. Let's not even look. The thing that we would normally do that's not the picture. There's nothing normal about this Ramadan.
Right.
This is going to be a very, very different Ramadan than we normally deal with. So how is Tarawih going to look like? Let's just put it like this. Let's just assume, especially for the sake of time, let's assume that there is no Tarawih. There's not going to be Tarawih at the masjid. Because for most people, that's going to be the scenario.
Right.
Okay. How do we now deal with that as a Muslim? And I need to say this because I feel like it's important that we understand that our Islam, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our bond with our Creator, nobody should come in between that. It can't be based on the fact that I get to worship with other people. Our relationship with Allah can't be based on that. And if we are, anything that we know is coming, anything that's important to us that is coming, we tend to prepare for it. Am I correct? I mean, I know you work with the.
I'm in law enforcement out there, so
you're in law enforcement.
I'm seeing a totally different viewpoint. So much so that there aren't no warrants, no major warrants being served. There's not people really getting locked up for certain crimes that they're committing.
No, I got Jihad. Listen, let me.
So I mean, this is what I would do. This would just be my suggestion.
No. Let me take a step back because I need you to understand. I need the listening audience to understand this point.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you work in law enforcement. there's nobody that becomes an officer except that they do what first? They go through training.
Right.
Correct?
Exactly.
You can't just say, oh, I want to be a police officer. You show up the next day, they give you a uniform, they hand you a gun, you don't even know what to do with the gun. You wind up shooting yourself in the foot, you killed somebody else because you didn't even pick it up the right way. You can't do that. You have to prepare. Okay. Are you following me on that?
I got you. I got you.
Anything that we know is coming. I mean, we have a lot of our listeners, a lot of our constituents and our congregants, they're students or they were students. You know that the test is coming up, the final exam you got on the first week of May. You're going to prepare for it because you know it's coming. Okay. One thing that we definitely know is coming is death. Okay? We know that we are going to die. How do we prepare for death? You can't pray. You're not going to be with your friends and your family and the people who stood next to you in the masjid. They're not going to be in the grave with you. The Prophet ﷺ told us that there are three things that follow you to your grave. Yeah. Two of them go back and one stay with you. Your family follows you, right? Your wealth follows you. Some of your possessions follow you. And your deeds follow you to your grave. All of that's going to go. Your family and your wealth are going to go back. You're not going to have that with you. Only thing you're going to have in your grave with you is your deeds. And we know that the Prophet told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the believer in the grave will see this beautiful figure come to him or her. And he will say, what are you? And he will say, Ana amaluka al-hasan. I am your good deed. That is going to be your companion in the grave. Now, how do we prepare for that time of being alone? See, one of the things that is legislated for us, and it's interesting how it ties into Ramadan, one of the things that's legislated for us to do in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, or the last 10 days, is to perform what is known as i'tikaf. I'tikaf means, for a general translation, would be seclusion in the masjid. You are secluded. You're in the masjid, but you're secluded. You're not with anybody else. You're in your own space. You're reading the Quran. You're praying. You're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're doing those things that draw you closer to Him, and you're all alone because it prepares you for the loneliness that you will face in your grave. But that loneliness is only lonely if you don't have good deeds to go with you. And so now when we take a step back and we say, what can I do? This Ramadan, the COVID-19 Ramadan, which is crazy. I mean, because when we look back in history, that's what we're going to call it.
Yes.
And Allah knows best. You look at the 1997, the Hajj that was done in 1997. That Hajj is famously known as the year of the fire. It's when men are burnt down. Everybody who remembers the Hajj of 1997, it's called the year of the fire. This Ramadan that's coming up is going to be called Ramadan of COVID-19. Allah knows best. So the Ramadan of the virus, the Corona, whatever, Corona Ramadan. Now, how do we prepare for that? What does that mean? How do we use this Ramadan? How do we make the best out of a bad situation? Nobody, there are people who say this can be your best Ramadan ever. No. It might be. It may be your best Ramadan ever. It's not the best Ramadan ever. There's nothing ideal about this Ramadan. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us for a reason. What can we get out of this? How can I make the best out of a bad situation? It's a bad situation. How do we make the best out of it? Now, here's what I'm going to suggest in the little bit of time that we have left. And inshallah, this is coming forth. I'm working with some other imams in the city. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to put out a series of tutorials on how to best benefit from this Ramadan. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is how do you pray the night prayer in your home with whatever Quran you know. And how can you start from now? Today is the 18th of Sha'ban, right?
Right.
Which means that Ramadan is going to be starting either on the 23rd of April or the 24th of April, the Thursday or Friday, which means that you'll be praying starting the night before the day of fasting, right? Because the night precedes the day. So that being said, how can I now, from now until then, what can I do to learn a little bit more Quran. Can you make sure that you memorize, for example, from Surah Al-Asr up to Surah An-Nas? If so, then that means you'll have memorized 12 surahs from the Quran, which means you can pray 12 rak'ah. Each surah, each rak'ah with a different surah. And then you can finish with witr, right? And how do you do that? And in the masjid, for example, when you normally pray for 45 minutes or an hour after Isha, can you do that same thing with whatever Quran you memorize? Absolutely. Take your time, recite it slow. As you learn these surahs, learn the meaning of wal asr. What does that mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by what is normally translated as time, but it's actually al-asr, and we all know what salat al-asr is. It's not just any time. It's the afternoon. And what happens after salat al-asr? After salat al-asr, the sun begins to set. It means that time is running out. Allah is reminding us, wal asr, time is running out. Innal insana lafi khusr. Mankind is at loss. We're all at loss unless we do those four things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us with right after that, except for those who do what? They have faith. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And they do righteous deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they mutually enjoying truth. And they mutually enjoying that patience. Recite that surah. Let it sink in. Don't recite it like a man might recite it in the masjid because he's got people behind him and he can't stop. You can recite wal asr and you can pause and think about what it means. I'm telling you that you can take whatever you know from the Quran and you can pray every night yourself for the same amount of time that you would normally pray in the masjid. Let that sink in. As you bow after you say, after you recite whatever you recite, you say Allahu Akbar, and you go into ruku' and you say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. Say it 20 times, 30 times. You don't have to just say it 3 times. Stay long in your sujood. And as you say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, after that, call upon Allah. You don't have to, in your sujood, after you say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, you don't have to make dua in Arabic if you don't know Arabic dua. You can say it in English and ask Allah for whatever it is that you want from the good of this life and the next. If you can do that, then you become the worshiper of Allah. Your worship is not based on the congregation. We can't be people who our deen is tied to what everybody else is doing because everybody else is not going to help you when you stand in front of Allah. In fact, Allah reminds us of that in the Quran. يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. The day when a person is going to run away from his brother, he's going to run away from his mother, he's going to run away from his father. Nobody's going to be there to help you. Nobody's going to be there to answer for what you've done or what you haven't done, that you were supposed to do.
Right.
And so we can actually use this Ramadan.
Yes.
Again, we're talking about making the best out of a bad situation. We're talking about making lemonade out of the lemon that we have, right? So, I mean, to use our colloquial expression, because the reality is, again, this isn't an ideal situation, and we don't want this to be the way that Ramadan looks moving forward. We want to be able to celebrate with community. But if that opportunity has been taken away from us, then let us realize that Allah is giving us another opportunity, and that is to use this Ramadan to perhaps become from amongst the people who pray the night prayer throughout their lives and not just in Ramadan. Maybe now that I feel more confident in my ability to do this prayer alone, I start praying more at night. I take advantage of that opportunity where Allah tells us that he comes closer to us in that last third of the night. And now I can call upon him and ask him for whatever I want. Again, my sole point in going on this digression is that we realize that we have to use this Ramadan to create a better relationship, personal relationship with Allah. And not that our worship of our Creator and not that our service to our Creator and then to his creation, that it is not based on the fact that I'm doing this in congregation. This is a big test for us. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the best and allow us to pass all of his tests.
Ameen. What I want to do, I want to jump to the phone line very quickly. We have Brother Jacob, who's been waiting very patiently. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Jacob.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Look, man, I'm getting it all. But for brother man, for 46 years, right, I've been reading the Holy Quran in English, right? And I got the part of the man's hijab, right? We get that one look. And I be using that especially where we live in the summer, right? That you definitely got to lower your gaze. But for the women, for the years that I've been a Muslim, there's always been a back and forth about does Allah in the Quran in Arabic order the women to cover their face, or is it the bosom? Because the reading that I've read, it always said that cover your bosom when you go out. But I've been in masjids where sisters have been going back and forth with, it should be your face. Is it the face or is it the bosom? And what's the difference? Can you throw a little light on that? And I'll listen, inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Jacob.
Assalamu alaikum.
We got like 2 minutes left.
Then very quickly, because off the topic of Ramadan,
Yeah.
just say
He snuck that one in.
what he's referring to is the 59th ayah in Surah Al-Ahzab, which is the 33rd chapter of the Quran, the 59th ayah. There are varying ways of interpreting that. There are many scholars of the past who have said that it does include the face, and there are some that says that it does not, and that's outside of the scope of what we have the ability to do within a minute's time.
Yes.
So we'll leave that for a different discussion, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay. Sheikh, leave us with some final thoughts of other things that people can do during this time right now, this very difficult time that we're in.
Okay, so I'll end with this. Allah has told us that He is Ar-Rahman, that He is the most merciful. And that is in the 55th chapter of the Quran, which is named after Ar-Rahman. It's called Surah Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. The second ayah, the second verse, there He says, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran. He taught the Quran. Part of His mercy to us is that He has taught us the Quran. He has revealed to us the Quran, which is His speech verbatim, and it has been preserved by God. It is the final revelation to mankind. What we should be doing with the extra time that we have, and especially as we move into the month of the Quran, the month of Ramadan, which is the month of the Quran, what we should be doing is spending more time trying to understand that book. The brother that just came on the line, he said he's been reading the Quran for 46 years. We need people to spend that time with the Quran, understanding it to the best of their ability, repeating it. There is a healing
Yes.
in the repetition of the Quran. So we should be reading that Quran not just once, but twice and 3 times. I'm talking about from cover to cover.
Sheikh, we
And on a monthly basis.
got to go. We ran out of time.